Welcome, Sagittarius. Thank you for joining me for your year 2020 horoscope forecast. This is for your sun or the ascendant. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. And please also press or tap on the alert notification bell. This year begins with the solar return, as it always does. And of course, in recent years, there has been a large emphasis on the sign of Capricorn, not just from the sun, which is typical at the turn of the year, but also the role of Pluto, which has been influencing your relationship to your values for 12 years, and Saturn, which has been having quite a sharp impact on your resources, money and self-worth over the last 2 years. Now, these two are still going to be hugely influential this year, and they begin the year in the sign of Capricorn. But also we have other influences at play. And one of the most interesting ones is that Mars is in the sign of Scorpio. And this suggests that there could be someone emerging back into your world this year that you've had some kind of contact with in the past, and it could be linked to your work. This can be quite an influential person, but there may have been a time when you've not been communicating. But delightfully, Venus, the planet of communication in terms of love and affection, is in the sign of Aquarius, which for you is your third solar house. All throughout 2020, you're going to have a magical talent to communicate your ideas with a real charm. But also, the moon is in the very tender fourth house, the sign of Pisces, and it's going to be conjunct Neptune. This suggests that your emotional world, your environment, your inner being, your sense of security are going to be hugely important this year and quite acute pursuits for you to get right. But it's also true to say that there is a return at the start of the year with Jupiter moving back into Capricorn, but in a conjunction with Mercury. And it's forging an amazing link, this combination, with Uranus. Now, Uranus is in the part of your horoscope to do with your work, to do with your life structure. And over the last couple of years, there probably has been some shaking up, some changes. Perhaps you've been liberated from things that haven't been working for you anymore. And perhaps there's been a new sense of freedom or enterprise in the way that you structure your everyday world. But with Mercury and Jupiter, Jupiter, the planet of opportunity, your ruler, now in the sign of Capricorn, these two are forging a great link with Uranus. And this suggests that all through this year, you are going to be generating some dazzling ideas to regenerate your financial situation. Because the truth is that Saturn has probably had quite a punishing impact. Even if you're someone who is very good at marshalling your resources, we can't all control what goes on outside of our own situation. And there may have been changes to your employment. There may have been some kind of situation that you've had no influence over, which has had an impact. And if this has happened to you, it may have had quite a serious impact indeed. Now, Saturn is going to continue to ask you to be very self-disciplined this year, but it's also going to move for some of the year into Aquarius before moving back into Aquarius on the 17th of December, which is your sector of thinking and ideas. So there's going to be an opportunity to be more enterprising this year, especially with this combination between Jupiter and Mercury. But also, as the turn of the year occurs, as usual, as I said before, the sun in Capricorn is going to be linking by the 10th, and we have a lunation, an annular lunar eclipse in the sign of Cancer, and it's going to be in opposition to not just the sun, Saturn and Pluto, but also Mercury, which has stepped forwards, and to join up with the asteroid Ceres, which is very much to do with nurturing. But Saturn alongside Ceres is not a very nurturing influence, quite frankly. It can be quite cold. It can pull down Ceres's natural desire to bring goodness to bear. So you still need to be very painstaking in your approach to marshalling those resources this year, but also marshalling how you feel about you. And I think that's the critical thing. Because as we enter into this new year, for about 9 months, Saturn and Pluto have been within 3 degrees, so a conjunction. And this conjunction is extremely powerful, and it finally comes up to an exact point of conjunction on the 12th of January. But because the eclipse is just before then, I want to focus on that. But first of all, on Mars, because Mars is going to have a major impact for you this year, as well as Venus. And the reason for this, Sagittarius, is that on the 3rd of January, Mars is going to move into your sign, and that is really going to fire you up. And even if you have been having some kind of contact, or even some yearnings for some situation from your past, or even clearing up unresolved dramas from your past over the festive period, very soon into this new year, this is going to give you a real sense of propulsion, energy, and focus. But remember I said about Venus. Venus in Aquarius is delightful, but I also said about the Moon and Neptune being in Pisces. If we take the midpoint between the Moon and the Sun in Capricorn, that comes out at just alongside Venus in Aquarius. So your mode of communication is going to be so important to your success this year. And the story between about Mars and Venus in general for this year, not just your solar return, which provides a backdrop for the whole of 2020, it's like the canvas that we're painting on, is that Mars is going to be spending the second half of this year in your sister fire sign of Aries. Yes, an extended 6 months. This is quite sensational when this planet usually spends 6 weeks in each zodiac sign. But also from the 4th of April to the 7th of August, Venus is going to be in your opposite sign of Gemini. Venus in the 7th house is delightful. It really does speak out of the possibility for an improvement in your love life, to meet someone new if you would like that, to mix and mingle, to find greater equanimity in existing relationships. And this combination is going to be really dynamic for you, but particularly in the month of June, when they're going to be cooperating splendidly. But let's go back now to January. So as we start this year, we also have the position of Chiron, the wounded healer, right at the start of your 5th house. If your love life has been an area of pain for you in recent years, Chiron is asking you to find some healing techniques. And with Black Moon Lilith conjunct Chiron, although it is in retrograde as this year begins, it's kind of saying to you that maybe that side of you that can be a bit more risque is certainly a part of you that you shouldn't neglect. Embrace the part of you that does have a fascination with hidden fruit. It could prove to be very exciting. But that eclipse, so it's the first of the year, it's in Cancer. Cancer's about nurture. It's about receptiveness. It's ruled by the moon. So in opposition, we've got that big lineup, that stellium in Capricorn, which is very much about traditionality, about the status quo. It's about materialism. It is about being more careful, more reserved in our approach to situations. Now, the ironic thing is that Jupiter, your ruler, is actually in full in Capricorn. So in other words, it's not at its best. But it is going to be forging a sensational link with Jupiter for a large part of this year. So it can bless you very helpfully. But generally, we have to accept that there could be some kind of restriction for you about your sense of self-worth or about concerns over balance in the books quite early in the year. But I think this is what this is basically saying to you, is just take into account the lessons you've been learning over the last couple of years with Saturn's help. Pluto's about transformation, but it's also about regeneration. Saturn may in some way be locking you into past conditioning in terms of your attitude to situations. And it's not just money, it's also about anything that's to do with trying to feed yourself emotionally with almost like the mythical sugar. So the sugar could be in sweet, gooey, calorific foods. It could be in alcohol. It could be in nefarious substances. It could be through gambling. It could be through sex even. So whatever it is that you've yearned for, that you kind of know yourself isn't good for you in terms of purity, maybe something you need to find a better balance on. Not necessarily completely eliminate, but just get a better balance. So I think that's really your target for the first 6 months of this year. But there is so much exciting stuff for you, not least that when Mars bursts into your sign on the 3rd of January, it's really getting you moving forwards. Now that transformation that I spoke of can really start to kick on from the 12th. And then on the 14th, Venus moves into Pisces. Now Venus in Pisces for you is very much about your home environment. And if you are hitting the sales, it wouldn't be a surprise if you do get something for your home. Or you even think about some early decoration. If you're in the southern hemisphere, you may be spending some time on your garden or perhaps more time in nature. But it's also true that on the 17th, Mercury replaces Venus in Aquarius, followed by the Sun on the 21st and a new moon on the 23rd. All of this for you is talking about a speeding up of your thinking. And with Mars in your sign, driving the whole process on, you really can be feeling a sense of excitement. So what's not to like? Well, really it comes from Mars's clash with Neptune in the last phase of January, which just suggests that however committed, focused and determined you are, there could be some confusion in your emotional situation or linked to a family member which could suddenly take the wind out of your sails. But sometimes that's when we really need to show our mettle and to dig down deep into our resources, of which you have lots. So this is a sparkling start to the new year. It's not a perfect start to the new year, but there is some truly exciting stuff set to unfold. Now on the 3rd of February, Mercury makes its way into Pisces, but it's not particularly happy in Pisces. And for you, Mercury going through your 4th house could be a time when you're just asked to stop and think and pause a little bit, or you may just find instinctively that you do question some of the parameters of your moves, particularly from a more emotional dimension. But because communication is so much to the fore with the sign of Aquarius, this too comes strongly into focus on the back of the full moon, which occurs in Leo on the 9th. But just before then, we get a magical moment because Venus relocates into Aries and immediately joins with Chiron. Now, not with Black Moon Lilith because that's inverting because of its retrograde, but this is a chance to try to regenerate the things that you're passionate about. It would be a fine time to give yourself some kind of makeover, to ask someone on a date, or if you're in a relationship which is ailing, try to find a serious plan to try to rejuvenate the passion between you and yours. But also, the 9th full moon in Leo is dissected in a T-square by that rather restless energy of Uranus. So I think there's going to be quite a lot of frenetic energy going on for the 2 weeks afterwards, and it could make you feel a little bit exhausted if you're not careful. Fortunately, on the 16th, Mars moves out of your sign where it goes into Capricorn, and this is really going to sharpen your point of attack when it comes to improving your resources throughout this year. Because if you have a clear plan and you're very enthusiastic about executing it, then there's every chance in the following 6 weeks you can start to see the evidence of all the hard work that you've been putting in, not just in the start of this year, but over the last couple of years, as Saturn has been asking so many questions of you in your 2nd solar house. On the 17th, however, Mercury goes into retrograde, which is not helpful. It's going to be inverting eventually in the early parts of March into the sign of Aquarius. So it could be that something that you were thinking about earlier in the year may go through a period of reflection and discussion with someone very close to you. But Mars does forge a tremendous angle to Uranus in the 16th to the 25th of February. And if ever there was a time to really be a bit more innovative and to push the boundaries and take a risk, something that you have an appreciation for naturally, this would be the time to go for it. And also on the 18th of February, another very pivotal moment, because after 11 months of being really quite closely tethered together, Saturn starts to move away from Pluto. So it goes beyond a 3-degree orb or gap between the two. I think this is going to be subtle, but there is a sense of liberation that's going to develop this year, even if you need to keep applying the lessons that Saturn's been asking of you. But on the 19th, the Sun moves into Pisces. So it is a time of the year where, generally speaking, you can feel the need to think more about shelter in a physical sense and an emotional. So you need to feel very comfortable wherever you are, be it in terms of your work, your hobbies, or inside yourself, or of course at home. Then again, it may be some family affairs that do need your attention, particularly as of course Mercury is in retrograde. But the 23rd's new moon does combine with Black Moon Lilith. And so what I feel can happen here is that if you've got some emotional needs that are not being met, then perhaps being a bit more frank about some of your vulnerabilities, which would be embracing the daring of Black Moon Lilith, could actually be very productive for you. People might be surprised if you reveal something of yourself that they're not expecting, but actually it can be very reinforcing for you to be that authentic. Also, the Sun forges a great link with Mars in the second part of this month. It's all to go for. It's about really believing in the plan, but the plan just may be more at a personal, private and emotional level at this phase of the year. As the month comes to a close, the retreating Mercury meets up with the advancing Sun, but it could mean that you have a brainwave, and it could be linked to working at home in some kind of way, or working with someone that you have a link with emotionally or through your family. It is true that week 3 sees Venus and Jupiter in a square, so that suggests that you should resist some kind of over-exuberant celebration. As March dawns, so the Sun and initially Mercury are still, along with Neptune, in your 4th solar house. Very much to do with that sense of feelings, where we feel most comfortable and serene. But as soon as the 4th, as I flagged before, Mercury inverts back into Aquarius. On the 10th, it's going to go forwards, and on the 16th, back into Pisces. There could be that there's been some kind of strand linking you to a sibling during this retrograde that could be quite important. However, on the 5th, Venus moves into the sign of Taurus. Now, this is really important because Venus isn't just about love and attraction. It is also about money, and the 6th house, where it goes alongside Uranus, is about your life structure and work. Something good can happen for you for a week, but it may require you to react very quickly. Now, you can be very decisive, even though you are a mutable sign, which means that you do flow and you're not necessarily fixed in any one mode of being. But something could come up here where someone's personal liking of you can be very helpful as far as business or prosperity are concerned. It's also possible that if you love animals, you could decide to get a new one. Or if a new one just suddenly comes into your world, you could be absolutely delighted. There could also be some fond kind of connection with an aunt or an uncle at this time. Now, the 5th to the 11th of March could be a little bit more challenging, Sagittarius. Then the Sun goes alongside Neptune, and you may suddenly feel as flat as a dead battery. Keep the faith. It's a temporary phase. It's just asking you not to make any big decisions, to pause, and if possible, have some rest. If you can treat yourself to some duvet days, I would. However, on the 9th, there is a truly significant event, one which is going to last through to the 4th of December. And I mentioned this at the turn of the year's influences. Jupiter is going to go alongside Pluto. So it's replacing Saturn. But whereas Saturn's about restriction, Jupiter's about growth. And okay, it's not at its absolute best in the sign of Capricorn. But I think generally, this is going to give you an opportunity to redevelop how you earn, how you feel about yourself. Remember, Pluto is about rebirth in some ways, Jupiter about expansion. So even if they're cautious in Capricorn, there can still be some very positive events to flow from this influence. Now on the 9th, there is a full moon in the rather earthy and gritty sign of Virgo. But it is actually, for you, right at the top of your scope. So your feelings may be quite close to the surface, particularly if you feel that someone isn't being very fair in your family. And because this full moon also connects to Jupiter and Pluto in that conjunction, I think it could be quite a powerful exchange if you do discuss this in the following 2 weeks. I've mentioned that Mercury goes forwards on the 10th, and on the 16th back into Pisces. But on the 20th, we have the vernal equinox, one of the most important parts of the whole astral calendar, because it's the very start of the journey. Wherever you are in the world, this is where the sun enters Aries. And remember, Western astrology is not based on fixed constellations. It's based on the seasons. So the seasons begin with earnest, and it's spring. Or of course, if you are in the southern hemisphere, it is your physical autumn. But the stars are about renewal here. So it's about new beginnings. And for you in your 5th solar house, and also with the sun conjunct Chiron, it's a chance where you can really embrace your creativity, your self-expression, your sense of fun, your sense of playfulness. If you want to charge up your love life, or to be more free-spirited, this is the time to go for it, especially on the back of the new moon of the 24th. But there's a highly important event on the 22nd when Saturn moves into Aquarius. So it's going to be here through to the end of June. This is your 3rd solar house. This is how you think. It's your ideals or belief systems that were invested in you when you were a child that may or may not have been challenged over the years. So it's a time for you to think about your belief systems. And between now and the end of June, you may find yourself becoming more serious about the things you do believe in. But also other people can be a bit sharper in challenging some of your ideas. Now on the 29th, Mercury comes out of shadow, which is going to be a relief for you, believe me, because muddling along as it has in the sign of Pisces, it's not its best transit for you. That's just the absolute fact. But by the 31st, there is another exciting event as Mars bustles into Aquarius too. But it's going to be conjunct Saturn for the first 5 days of April. So if you do have something that you want to present to people, information that you feel really passionate about, you can do so with real intent. People will know that what you say is really what you mean. Which brings us to April, Sagittarius. And not only do we have that conjunction between Saturn and Mars, we also have Venus moving into your opposite sign on the 4th, where it's going to be through to the 7th of August. And as I flagged up before, this is beautiful. The 7th house is about finding equanimity. It's about finding balance in your relationships. If there has been a breach, this is a time to try to heal it, or at least part on better terms. If you're looking to meet someone, you're going to come across as very attractive, very alluring. If you're in an existing relationship, working to be more cooperative together can also be very uplifting for you both. But quite frankly, if you are a solo Sagittarius person, this transit over the next 4 months, and Mars in the last 6 months, as I said before, is really giving you a big push to discover what can come from relating carefully to others. Now, it's also true to say that from the 5th through to the 10th, Mercury is forging a link with Jupiter, a very upbeat link. Think on your feet. There may be something you could do, and it could come through a conversation you have with someone in your family. On the 8th, however, there is a full moon in the rather gentle Libra, which for you is about friendship, but it is going to be squaring up in a clattering bang with both Jupiter and Pluto. I think it's basically saying to you that you can't keep all of the people all of the time happy, and over the following 2 weeks there may be some friendships that do make way in your world simply because you're realizing they never have the kind of value system that you have, or perhaps they've got a reckless attitude to money, or someone's going to flag up a get rich quick scheme that actually comes to absolutely zero. So be very grounded about the way you spend your time and who with, but do try to get a good balance between having some social time for yourself and who you spend time on a more intimate basis with. Now, on the 11th, Mercury moves into your 5th solar house, Aries. It loves this transit, and it's alongside Chiron. So how you think can be important to your health. But also, it's a time when your sense of humour can really start to sparkle. And this is a chance for you to also be much more playful. I think this is really quite lovely. And then on the 20th, the Sun is going to be moving into Taurus. This does have an interesting interplay with Uranus, that planet of surprises, because by the 23rd and the new moon, which also is very infused by this particular Uranus influence, it's asking you to be as open-minded as possible about how you can organise your situation. The fact that you can be flexible, as well as have quite strong philosophical beliefs, is really going to be to your advantage. In fact, in week 3, Mercury forges a brilliant angle to Mars, and that's going to help you to articulate your ideas with a real sense of conviction and confidence. On the 25th, however, Pluto does go into a retrograde. When the big planets go into retrogrades, things definitely slow down. And with this one, I just feel it means look inside for answers about your self-worth rather than wanting to get it from outside things, or just being frank, we all have them, those props that we all seek when we're feeling a little low. On the 28th, however, Mercury makes its way into Taurus too, again getting alongside Uranus. So your ability to think on your feet, flex your mind, be open to new ideas, could see something happen quite quickly, which can be very positive for you and your career or job. Which brings you to May, Sagittarius, a month which sees the North Node, the point of destiny, which has a kind of mini Jupiterian influence, in other words, fortunate. It's a nominal point, but it inverses, so it goes backwards to the rest of the zodiac. For all of this year so far, and for some of last year, it has been in Cancer, your 8th solar house, which is very much to do with deep transformations. Moving into the sign of Gemini on the 5th, it also links with the gorgeous Venus in your 7th house of Gemini. This combination gives you an instant dividend. It's asking you and can suggest to you that your relationships are going to be hugely important and this year. And of course, it's not just with this combination. It's because Mercury, the planet of communication, also makes its way into Gemini this month. So does the Sun, and we have a new moon, but a new moon that's anchored brilliantly by the rather stabilising energy of Saturn. Now, it is true to say that there's a full moon on the 7th in the deep and passionate Scorpio. This could be a bit unsettling. It could bring something to the surface that you're not expecting, and it may be related to someone's lack of sincerity, trust, or their lack of honesty. But I just want to reassure you that on the other side of the heavens, the Sun is joined by Mercury in Taurus, so that can help you to decipher any mixed messages you get with a bit more logic than is usually possible when the Scorpio full moon, which is hugely powerful, generally happens. On the 11th, however, Saturn does slam on the brakes, and it does so initially in the sign of Aquarius. So it could point towards a bit of a cooling of a relationship with a neighbour between now and the end of June, or perhaps it's a sibling where there may not be quite the ease of communication that you've had. However, the 12th, with Mercury firing its way into Gemini, can see you back on the front foot, and your listening skills are going to be really critical from this point on. On the 13th, Mars does make its way into Pisces. I can only be really honest with you. This is not its greatest transit. It's watery, it's soggy. Mars, of course, is about fire, but it could get you going if you want to make some physical changes to where you live. It's just important not to be too defensive in any emotional context in the following 6 weeks. Also, it's true to say that Venus starts a retrograde on the 13th. And again, that asks you just to be careful about relationships, because you've got so much good stuff there. It's just about not taking them for granted, quite honestly. So choosing your words carefully with Saturn in retrograde would be a big assist in that regard. The 21st sees the Sun into Gemini, and that new moon, which sparkles and can really see you flexing to get on with people, lots of different types of people, but also it's pushing you to perhaps be a bit more competitive, or to firm up your boundaries, or to sharpen up your listening skills. On the 29th, however, Mercury does move into Cancer, which I think is a more challenging transit, because it's the 8th house, and so therefore it gives you an opportunity to probe and delve and penetrate beneath the surface. But because of the water, the moon of Cancer, it can affect the logic that Mercury likes to deploy. As we come into June, which is going to be seminal because it's got 2 big eclipses, we also still have Jupiter and Pluto in conjunction, if both in rotation. But there is an aspect I want to tell you about. If you remember, Mars made its way into Pisces last month. And for the first 3 weeks of this month, it is going to be badly jarring with the Sun in the sign of Gemini. So what you have here from your sign is a T-square, but influencing your emotional sector. So a relationship could frustrate you this month, I think. So that energy that you're getting from Venus is going to be helpful, but Venus is going to be retrograde through to the 25th. So patience is going to be important. Patience and the passage of time do more than strength or fury, said Jean de La Fontaine, a French philosopher. I love that because it's so true. So there may be something that you're just itching to get along with, especially that involves someone else, and they may not be kind of getting it in the way you want, which could be rather exasperating. But that brings us to the conjunction between the Sun and Venus for the first 5 days of this month. And if there is a situation where you need to deploy oodles of charm, diplomacy and courtesy, then that aspect will certainly help. But on the 5th, we do have an annular lunar eclipse in your sign. And this is going to be squaring Mars, of course. And then Mars goes alongside Neptune from the 9th to the 17th. And your thinking around a home or emotional matter may be a little bit distorted or out of sorts, or you could lose energy, feel really deflated. It's a kind of 4 of coins card situation, but keep the faith. The big picture is so good. On the 18th, Mercury goes into retrograde in Cancer, not helpful. And also, because it's the sector of your long-term resources, be careful around any kind of business finance, or if you're looking at pensions or insurances or property matters, everything can just really slow down. On the 21st, however, the Sun makes its way into Cancer, so that bolsters up the retrograde to Mercury. The Cancer Sun here is going to be passionate. It's about transformation. Maybe there are parts of your life that have come to a natural close and need to be released in order to let in new energy. So just think about what some of those things can be. But that brings us on the same day to the first solar eclipse of the year. It is annular, it is in Cancer, but crucially, it does forge a link with Saturn, a quincunx, which is a stress aspect. So what Saturn's saying to you in reverse in Aquarius is choose your words carefully. Don't be too somber about your ideas. Don't be too blunt. Be cautious about formulating your plans. Don't be too caught up in the conditioning you were given around your ideas when you were a kid. And its angle with this emotional, very emotional eclipse is saying in the second half of this year that transformation can come from you, but not if you're stuck in your thinking. So that may require you, this particular eclipse, to let go a bit around that quite relentless need you have for space and independence. So in other words, the best dividends for you this year can come from collaboration, whether it's through the spirit of compromise, cooperation, and practical helping of one another, or it comes from laughter, energy, and pure sex appeal that's going to come in the second half of this year with Mars. But with this Cancer energy is asking you to be tuned into your feelings like never before. On the 25th, Venus emerges from that retrograde. That's going to help any relationship scenario. And the 28th, Mars makes its way into Aries, where it's going to be to the 6th of January 2021. This is such a great development for you. Of all the zodiac signs, even including Aries, you're really going to benefit from this the most, because the 5th house that that Mars is going to be going through for you, the sign of Aries, is of course in your fire triplicity, but for you it's also about self-expression, confidence, self-belief, listening to your hunches, taking steps to go forwards without analysing too much, just listening to your gut feeling and going for it. But it can also see you very colourful, individualistic, fun to be with, playful. It is absolutely loaded with goodies, and it's yours for 6 whole months, Sagittarius. So really exciting stuff as this month comes to a close. Now, as we come into July, there are some tasty oppositions set to go on, and they kind of echo out to some of the energies that were threaded through the back of 2019 for you, which is very much to do with resources, balancing ingoings and outgoings, but also your immediate reaction to situations in terms of what you believe in, but more your more considered reaction too. So the higher, more philosophical of the side of your nature, and the more instant human reaction, but through the prism of the 2nd and 8th houses, which is very passionate. And the 8th house, of course, is Cancer. So at the start of the month, with Saturn moving back into the opposite sign of Capricorn, remember I've said on the 1st of July, goes back into Capricorn in the retrograde and merges into Aquarius on the 17th of December. So as this month begins, we have another eclipse on the 5th in Capricorn. So with Saturn going back into Capricorn, and also from the 11th to the 16th, the Sun being in opposition to Jupiter, that's a period of time when you could potentially splash the cash. You may even be tempted by a big ticket item, or it could be someone who's quite swanky or has a very charismatic, steaming, sultry presence that you find enormously hard to resist. But then with Mercury going forwards in your 8th house on the 12th, that helps you to be a bit more clinical about things, a bit more detached. However, from the 13th to the 18th, and also later on the back of the new moon, which is going to occur in Cancer on the 20th, that's being smashed by Saturn, and that's a really tough new moon. So if there is some kind of biting point as far as your sense of self, your sense of worth, your income, or finding it hard to get by, that could be the killer point of the whole year. But you know, in a romantic context, Venus and Jupiter Venus and Mars, I beg your pardon, are forging a gorgeous link all through this month. And that's going to see you have a real platform to connect. And what really matters in life is good health and good relationships. It's not really loot. We need loot to work well for us, to enforce our sense of security. And it's good to thrive and prosper. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as we use the money that we get in a good way, a helpful way. We recycle it for the good of everyone where possible. But I do feel that once the sun moves on the 22nd into Leo, you're really going to come into your own and pick up the energy of that Venus-Mars sextile, which is so helpful to you. And as the month comes to a close, with Mercury also coming out of shadow on the 26th, any financial issue which has really been grinding your gears has a good chance to be resolved, but especially where you can go on the front foot and take the initiative, which comes through the 9th house energy of the sun. So, as August breaks, there's so much to go for you, Sagittarius. It is true in the first 10 days that Mars and Jupiter are in a square, but that's kind of a little bit of an echo of your zodiac sign, which is very much about enthusiasm, about sometimes going for it when other people demur. You have that inner belief to just think that things will work out well. And that happy-go-lucky nature can be such a great asset to you. However, it is true to say that from the 5th through to the 22nd, a much more complex aspect takes place, a square between Mars and Pluto. This is more warlike, to be honest. And it's just saying to you, don't chance money that you haven't got. Don't take any flagrant risks, nor buy things from dodgy people or go to dodgy areas. I'm being absolutely serious. Mars square Pluto is a heavyweight nasty. However, on the 3rd, there is a full moon in Aquarius, which is good for you. It's about everyday communication, but it is opposing the sun in Leo, and again, it T-squares Uranus. So it's going to create more restlessness. This is like a mirror image of the 9th of February's Leo full moon. But on the 5th of August, great event. Mercury moves into Leo. It's going to have a quick transit through this sign because it moves on the 20th into Virgo. But what this is going to do on the 5th is give you an opportunity to really move forwards, because it has been submerged by that watery sogginess that it's had in Cancer. And I think this would be a great time to book a holiday, to think so much more expansively. And although Mars is really challenged by Pluto this month, it's really enhanced by the Sun. And from the 8th, when Venus makes its way into Cancer, which can be very good for your sex life, bringing to an end that 4-month transit through Gemini, and be good, very good for you financially too. But from the 11th through to the 21st, the Sun's forging a brilliant trine to Mars. This is fabulous, especially if you want to learn something, you want to travel, you want to be more passionate, outgoing. And also it's going to embrace the new moon of the 19th, this particular angle between the Sun and also Mars. So that's going to bring you really halfway through September, really surging forwards. It's just not trying too hard with that Mars square Pluto. On the 20th, Mercury moves into its other home zone of Virgo, followed by the Sun on the 23rd. And it is true in the last 2 weeks of August that Saturn is also a little bit in conflict with Mars. But I think that what this is saying to you, it's saying that any plan that you have needs to be really tested to destruction, particularly if it's about risk-taking. But the last week sees an awesome angle between Mercury and the Sun and Jupiter and Pluto. So the Sun and Mercury moving into Pluto, into Virgo for you, is right at the top of your scope, your 10th house, your midheaven, the way that you elevate your presence, the way you attract more attention, the way that you promote your ideas, that you go for goals and success. And you can really shine with the support of Jupiter and Pluto to the Sun and Mercury. There is a bit of a gotcha as the month comes to a close. Someone could offer a financial deal to you with Venus opposite Pluto that has one mighty catch, but it may not be obvious. So if someone's been amazingly charming to you, just wonder what's behind it. Even in a love situation, you could find there's a big attraction, but it may be more lust than compatibility. So just bear that in mind. As September begins, you're still being encouraged by the stars to aim high, Sagittarius. There is, it's true, on the 2nd a full moon. So this is just reminding you, like we all need to always bear in mind, of finding that rightful work-life balance. And of course, we all live such frenetic, busy lives these days. It's not always easy to do this. But actually, Uranus could see you coming up with some real innovations over the next 2 weeks about how you can just alter things around, realign things, eliminate things that are no longer serving your greater purpose to bring in new energy, which can help you to achieve that perfect balance. On the 6th, Venus moves into a fantastic location for you, into the Grand Leo. This transit can really see you strut your stuff in a very Sagittarian way for the following 28 days. It's about travel, it's about widening your horizons, it's about being open to new people, different philosophies and cultures. If you are on holiday, vacationing, this is the perfect time for you. But furthermore, Mercury moves on the same day into the friendly sign of Libra. And the combination between the two provides a backdrop for the rest of the month. So it's a brilliant opportunity to mix and mingle, especially with the people you love most. But you could find that there can be some rejuvenation to some of your relationships, and you could have new people coming into your world through your work. Now on the 9th, Mars does slam on the brakes in the 5th house. And you've seen that Mars has already been challenged. And it is going to continue to be checked this month by Saturn. I just feel, again, when it comes to risk-taking around resources or being too avant-garde, if you like, around your approach to romance, just be a little more cautious and it will help you to deal with the potential restrictions and frustration that this right angle can bring. However, on the 13th, there's a joyous piece of news. Jupiter goes forwards. And when your ruling planet does start to head forwards, so you head forwards. And a sense of renewal and renewed hopefulness about how you can generate a greater sense of self-worth, but also improve your financial lot in the last phase of this year. The last quarter is definitely going to manifest itself for you. On the 16th, there is a new moon in Virgo. So this is your opportunity to match your emotional intent with your drive and ambition that comes from the sun. However, it is true that from the 19th through to the 26th, Mercury in Libra is clashing with Pluto and Jupiter. Don't push too hard. It could be also that somebody that you thought that you had very aligned values with actually disappoints you quite seriously in the latter part of this month. But on the 23rd, with the sun making its way into Libra, there is the chance for people to please and delight you, and your social situation can definitely pick up. The 27th, however, does see a bit of a contrast and also somewhat of a dichotomy, because Mercury does probe down deep into your 12th house. So as much as your social life can sparkle in this phase of the month and year, I do think it's going to be the most sincere friends that you'll want to hang out the most with. Saturn also ends its retrograde as this month comes to a close, something we can all let a sigh of relief out about. But the really significant thing for you, Sagittarius, is this is the last time Saturn's really going to be pinning you, for which it has done over the last 2.5 years. And then on the 29th, Saturn ends its retrograde. It's gone through 3 retrogrades in the time it's been going through the sign of Capricorn, and by the 17th of January it moves into your sector of ideas. And I do feel it's going to lighten things up, particularly with Jupiter going forwards when it comes to your income. As you make your way into October, we have some celestial magic, Sagittarius. There are 2 full moons, a blue moon. The first is in the sign of Aries, which is all about fun, enjoyment, and social interaction. This needs to be balanced against your need to fit in with others, against your need to do what's right for you, the individual. But also on the 3rd, Venus travels to the top of your scope, suggesting someone influential can take a shine to you in the following 28 days, or you could form an important alliance or friendship through your work. It is true that Mars is clashing with Pluto again this month. This is because of Mars's retrograde. Mars is in the 5th solar house for you, brilliant for reinforcing those enjoyable strands. But Pluto is asking you to be ultra responsible about resources. And if you feel that a prize that you want is available to you, the temptation could be to force the pace, or even to take shortcuts, or to even use unwise leverage in order to get an advantage. I really would advise you resist, particularly with the Sun in the sign of Libra, which really is going to really ask of all of us to try to keep a sense of equanimity and fairness. However, it is true that from the 8th to the 21st, we have a series of squares between the Sun in Libra and also Jupiter, Pluto and Saturn. What we've got here for you particularly is where your values may not necessarily mesh particularly well with someone you encounter, or it could be that you're being rather idealistic, or someone you encounter is anything but idealistic and just has got their eye on the main prize, and you feel that you could be cheated. It's a time to pick your company very carefully, especially on the back of the new moon, ironically. Usually a Libra new moon would be gorgeous for you, but this one does clash with both Pluto and Saturn, so do choose your company carefully. Now, Mercury is going to be going retrograde mid-month in a very psychological place for you, which could bring some anxieties to bear or some concerns that you're on the right track. Perhaps it's also about certain friendships and not doing it for you in the way you would like. But there is a beautiful link between Venus and Pluto between the 18th and the 24th, which suggests that that person that you connect with in a professional situation or dimension can be a real asset for you. And there's a body of days there that something special can really happen. It could also be good for your love life. Maybe you and yours are going to look at a property and something significant can happen at that time. The 23rd sees the Sun burrow its way into the deep and transformational Scorpio, which for you is your 12th solar house, a time of reflection. But Mercury rewinds back into your sector of friendships. Perhaps you have been thinking, talking and disseminating some information around a group of friends or one individual, and now you're going to come to a clearer idea of where you stand, particularly with Venus moving on the 28th into Libra, its home zone, and that will definitely be a real positive for you. The full moon, however, occurs in the sign of Taurus, where already we have Uranus, and where you have been given opportunities this year to reform your approach and practicalities by being open-minded. But there is, in the last 4 days of this month, a really grindingly frustrating right angle between Mercury and Saturn. This could see you feeling a bit limited, a bit dispirited, a bit beaten down. Don't let it. With Venus in the sign of Libra, so much is possible if you can keep up a campaign of graciousness. As you begin November, Sagittarius, yes, there is the passionate energy of Scorpio, but there's also that energy in the sign of Libra. And on the 3rd, Mercury goes forwards in this area. If there is a mystery to solve, I do think it will start to come into focus more clearly on the 11th when it returns to the sign of Scorpio, and then on the 16th when it comes out of shadow. That out of shadow feeling is going to provide a deep insight into something which has provided a little bit of concern. But also on the 14th, Mars ends its retrograde, and this is something to truly celebrate after those bruising right angles with both Pluto and Saturn. Now, on the 1st, there is a new moon in Scorpio, but this forges a gorgeous link with Neptune. If you really want to listen to your sixth sense about any issue, the following month is going to see you with a really profound, almost psychic antenna. Don't ignore it. There is a tendency for Sagittarius people, when emotional issues occur, to be resoundingly positive, and to feel that you just have to get on the front foot and embrace the next new exciting strand. But sometimes it's important to let things settle, to clear, to work them through. And I think this particular new moon will be very helpful in that regard. On the 22nd, however, we have one of the star moments of the whole year, because this year, that's the day the sun returns to your sign. But there's more than this, because ironically, Venus moves into your 12th house on the same day. So as much as the sun may give you a jolt of extra energy, vitality and certainty, Venus could see you thinking very carefully about a relationship right through to the 15th of December. On the 29th, however, with Neptune going forwards, some of the sluggishness around your emotional world can start to ease. But there is, on the 30th, a Gemini annular eclipse, a lunar eclipse. So this is really flagging up relationships for you. If a relationship really isn't working, you're going to be thinking about it very carefully in the following 2 weeks, which brings us into December. And on the 3rd day, Mercury arrives in your sign. So its transit through the sign of Scorpio, which has been quite punishing, I think, is going to make way for you coming into the present, feeling so much better. The truth is, in a technical way, Mercury is actually in detriment in your sign. But I think it's going to see you really coming into the strands that are really important to you. And this is building towards one of the most hugely influential moments of the whole year for you, Sagittarius, when on the 14th, there is a total solar eclipse in your sign. But it's not just that it's a total solar eclipse in your sign. It's the angle it forges with Mars. This is going to drive you into the first 5.5 months of 2021 in the most intoxicating form. You're really going to be rebel rousing. This is giving you permission to be the person you really want to be, the authentic individual that's fearless, outspoken, funny, entirely unique to your individuality. And that's something that some other zodiac signs can only dream of. And it's going to be enhanced by your ruler moving on the 20th into Aquarius. It is true that Saturn is going to be moving for a longer stint into Aquarius on the 17th, I beg your pardon. But that change, the joint change of those two together, is fascinating. Jupiter's about growth, Saturn's about restriction and obstacles. Put the two together, you just get timely growth. And I think if there have been some real challenges for you around your financial situation over the last couple of years, or just how you really feel about yourself, as this year comes to a close, you really can celebrate. Not least because the Sun and Mercury move on the 21st into Capricorn. And then it's all falling into place. All the hard work, the unstinting, sustained effort and application which Saturn has been really asking you to invest is going to come to the fore in a very bubbly and upbeat way. And I think you're going to end this year feeling so excited. There is a full moon on the last day of the year in the deep and passionate 8th house for you. But you know, as you pull the night down on the end of 2020, I think it is going to be in rather triumphant form. But if you'd like to know how this year will pan out for you on a purely personal basis, not just your zodiac sign, and based on your time, date and place of birth, you can order a 12-month forecast from me and get 30% off. If you order it in 2019, I give you the rest of 2019 free. If you order it in 2020, I'll give you 12 months from the point of the order. Please see beneath this video, but for now, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure. Good luck and goodbye for now.